When you think about Congressman Barney Frank, how would you describe his legacy?
Well, I think it's indisputable that Barney Frank was a crusader for causes that he believed in. As a young man, he marched with civil rights protesters in Mississippi, left Harvard University early to become part of a vanguard of young college educated people who went into Boston City Hall to help shape the new Boston. And then as a state representative on Beacon Hill for many years, and then, of course, during 3 decades in Congress. He was a staunch advocate for civil rights in general, gay rights in particular, and spoke out on a number of issues that sort of cut against the partisan grain, if you will. For instance, in more recent years in Congress, he became an advocate for deep cuts in the defense budget, even when it was pointed out that those cuts would affect jobs and economic activity in his own district, the 4th Congressional District. So if Barney Frank believed in a cause, you could count on him to pursue it aggressively, without fear, without apology.
And I think when he was in Congress, he kind of represented the more left from the kind of typical centrist Democrats, but he was able to kind of bridge the gap between those two sectors. How do you think he would be in Congress if he was alive today and still in office?
Oh, well, in an unfortunate kind of way, I think Barney Frank would be perfectly suited for today's Congress, where everyone is at everyone else's throat in the most aggressive, abrasive, partisan way possible. Frank could do that. He could play that game, and he did at times during his career. Admirers called it cantankerous. Critics and enemies might have had another phrase for it. But look, no one ever disputed Barney Frank's work ethic, his intelligence, and his commitment to the causes that he believed in. This didn't always produce perfect policy. Congress isn't a place that tends to produce perfect policy. The Dodd-Frank banking regulations that he's so closely associated with remain controversial many years after they passed initially. Some people blamed him for lack of foresight in his to the positions he took about government housing lending in the years leading up to the subprime mortgage crisis that triggered the 2008 recession. So while he was not perfect, I would point people back to an early campaign slogan of Barney Frank's when he was running for the Massachusetts House. It showed a picture of Frank, disheveled, tieless, hair not combed, which was his typical look. And the slogan was, neatness isn't everything. And I think the case can be made, Barney Frank proved that was very true.
And I want to look back at, the early 90s where he was going through that scandal at the time, and then eventually, being recognized as this trailblazer for LGBTQ people, being the first openly gay member of Congress. Looking back on that to where we are now in 2026, he was a trailblazer in that respect.
You know, even though he was a closeted gay man for many years, even as he was promoting gay rights legislation at both the state and federal level. Obviously, the scandal was not a happy time in Barney Frank's life. He was reprimanded by the House for fixing parking tickets for the gay prostitute that he had brought into his home, and for also misleading an investigation into some of the specifics of that episode. However, uh, probably the most memorable and telling thing about that whole episode is that when he ran for reelection the first time after the scandal, Frank was easily reelected. And that indicated that even in a district which was liberal in its northern end, Newton and Brookline, but quite a bit more conservative in the southern end, the Fall River, New Bedford part of the district, uh, Barney Frank's constituents, whatever they might have thought of him personally or his personal lifestyle choices, appreciated and respected the hard work that he put in and how he was there for his constituents. And that was, in a way, a breakthrough moment. Prior to then, it was believed that if you were outed as gay in politics, your career was over. Barney Frank proved that that was not so.
And on that point, I mean, he was winning his elections by large margins really throughout his tenure. What made him so popular with voters in his area?
Hard work, constituent service, a willingness to go to bat for causes that might not have been popular, and showing up. I mean, this man devoted his life to his work. There's no two ways about that. And people appreciated that. There was never a sense with Barney Frank that he was serving the bidding of special interests or wealthy donors. It was always a sense that he was going to bat for what he believed in and for the people who sent him to Congress. And that served him very well as a political figure over the years.
And I know post-Congress, a lot of these outlets, they kind of do these surveys about the members in Congress over the years. And when he was there, a lot of people would say he's wicked smart and he's wicked fast. He has those quips that he would deliver all the time that would certainly grab attention. Anything that sticks out to you just about his character and some of the things he said over the years that garnered that attention?
Well, if you look around for genuine humor and wit in American politics today, you're going to have a hard time finding any. There isn't too much that's funny about the people in it and what they say. But Barney Frank did have a sense of humor. It could be caustic and cutting, as he could be. But one line that stands out in my memory is he was a staunch defender of President Bill Clinton during the whole Monica Lewinsky impeachment period. And when the Starr report, the investigative report that included all sorts of salacious allegations about the president's behavior came out, Barney Frank was asked his thoughts on it, and he said, I had trouble reading it. Too much talk about heterosexual sex. And that was a good example of the kind of one-liner that only Barney Frank could deliver.
And as we're talking about, his legacy after his passing now this morning, anything else that you think's worth sharing in talking about the former congressman?
Um, I mean, I don't want to inject anything negative into a moment of eulogy and remembrance, but I think Barney Frank's life, and I think he'd probably be the first one to admit he talked about this, reflects what a difficult, lonely, hazardous life serving in elective office can be. He obviously had personal struggles. Those are well known. He had difficulty cobbling together a satisfactory personal life, which he did do later in life. He got married and appeared to have had a relatively happy retirement. But Barney Frank didn't get rich as a congressman, as a lifelong politician. He struggled at times with difficult periods in his life. Nonetheless, he persevered. His constituents made their appreciation clear by sending him back time and again with wide margins. And that's, in a way, I think probably the single most salient fact of his legacy. He did it right in many, many ways.